Hey everybody, how's it going? Michael Mosley here, aka ZaphMod, and I'm joined here today by Alex Maier and Sam Jasons. Please tell me I got your name right. And if this was the moment that I messed it up, I'm going to be super sad and super apologize. Yes,
That's
Jason
okay.
Sam, right?
Close enough.
It's close enough.
But I'm pretty sure I got at least half of it right. We'll go with half.
Jason Sands. No, you got it right, just in the wrong order.
Oh, well, look at that. You get one thing right and you mess it up with something else.
That's all right. We're shy snake. That's all that matters.
As long as everybody's happy with it.
No,
So, I'm sorry?
I said we're good.
No, all right. So, you two are independent game developers, and you're working on your first game, a real-time strategy game called Spy DNA. So before we get into the game, can you tell us a little bit about Shy Snake?
Yes. So we started the company about a year ago, in June last year, when I left my full-time job and focused on developing this game full-time. We named the company Shy Snake because we like snakes, and and snakes are really shy, so we just kind of figured, and also that URL wasn't taken. And then in February, Jason left his job, and now the two of us are working on the game full-time. This is our very first game, and we both really like strategy games and third-person games. So when we were picking out which game to start with, we kind of decided that we wanted to make a strategy game.
Right. So, Alex, what is your position in the studio?
I guess the official title is founder because I was the first one to quit the job. But I would, I guess, describe myself as a creative, creative director or VP of creative. Because what I do is I write the story and I come up with all the dialogue and I design every level map. So I'm the person who places every single thing on the map and kind of designs the world as the player will see it.
And what about you, Jason?
So I'm the technology guy. I've been doing development a long time. So I've been working primarily on the game engine, getting our code interfaced with Unreal and making sure all the gameplay works as we intended. I'm also kind of the gameplay designer. So in terms of game balancing, weapons design, designing the stealth system, that's my area.
Okay. With you two working together, you're a married couple, correct?
Yep.
So with you two working together, have you ever thought about branching out or finding a freelance or somebody to help with the extra load?
It depends. We've talked about it. It really depends on financing. So that was one of the reasons we went to Kickstarter, was to try to raise a little money to contract out some of the work. For instance, things like mocap. We obviously don't have our own mocap studio, being a two-person team. So that was one of the things we're looking at getting external help for. And,
the two of us have fairly well-defined areas that we're good at, and then everything else we kind of have to make up as we go along. So it would be wonderful to hire people to help us with those areas that, we have to learn as we go. For me, that's 3D design, material design, lighting. I'm very, happy when I start inventing the world and I have my map and I put things in place, but then it's like, how do I make them look good in the game? Where do I place all the lights, and what materials should I be using so that, it all looks lifelike and perfect? would love to have some help. But of course, we are financing our entire game from our savings. So we have been getting help from a wonderful, talented young man in Chicago area who has been designing weapons for us. His name is Connor. And as we're getting ready to create a demo, the first public demo, we will be using the weapons that he has designed for us.
Okay, so what can you tell us about? Can you tell us a little bit about your Kickstarter and the goals you hope to reach with it?
So the Kickstarter is live right now. It can be reached at bit.ly/SpyDNA. Very simple. I was, very happy that the URL was still available. And we set the goals fairly high for a small indie studio at $150,000. But that was because we actually ran the numbers. We went to all the companies that we wanted to work with and whose products we wanted to buy. And we talked with freelancers, and we based all these numbers on actual quotes from all these service providers or creative artists. And if the Kickstarter succeeds, we will be able to hire motion capture artists and record special animations that currently we can't find anywhere, like when somebody's limping or clutching their side if they have been injured. We will be able to, of course, get more help designing unique items for the world, like the cryogenic pods and all of the things that make our story unique and illustrated in the best possible way. So instead of buying them off the shelf somewhere and hoping it all will work in the end, we'll be able to create custom items for the world and custom characters also. So that's kind of what, and one of the things that I keep bringing up that I'm really excited about would be custom music. So again, instead of just buying some off-the-shelf music that anybody can buy and have in their game, we hope to be able to work with a company that provides procedurally generated music. So depending on what's happening on the screen, if the situation is peaceful or if it's in combat or if you're puzzled and trying to solve a riddle or something, the music will change and the mood of the music will change. And on every playthrough, you will get a different soundtrack. That's so super neat, and I'm really excited, and I hope we can afford it.
Okay. So you talked about the Kickstarter. What can you tell us about SpyDNA? What exactly is the game?
So SpyDNA, it's a game set in the future where you're playing a super spy. And the idea of the game is, well, I'll let Alex tell the story because she's working the expert on the storyline.
So the idea is that, the government has sponsored a project, a secret project that allows the researchers to genetically enhance soldiers to make them into super spies. They get, stronger, smarter, more intelligent than anybody else. And the game starts with your main character, the character that you create, joining this program and being enhanced. And then between deployments, they put you in cryogenic storage because it's the future and that's what we do in the future, apparently. And one fine morning or afternoon, you wake up from your cryogenic sleep and the lab where this project is running has been attacked. They stole all the research. They stole a lot of the chemicals that are required to run the lab. And now it becomes the job of the main character to find out what happened, track down the evildoers, and stop them before they use the research for evil purposes. So
what made you choose an RTS for your first game project? Because RTS, it takes a lot of management and a lot of resources. So why go with an RTS for your first big step?
I wouldn't really characterize this as an RTS. when I think of RTS, I think of games with a lot more characters in play at a given time. We're really more of a tactical game where you have a small number of troops on your side. Usually your party is going to be between 1 and 4. So you can pay a very close attention to those characters. But one of the things that really separates us, I think, from most games on the market is we're putting a lot of attention into what I would call situational awareness. When you look at the market out there, a lot of people really like turn-based games. And a lot of people like what I would term as real-time with pause. And they each seem to have their own separate feels, their own separate types of gameplay. And we're really kind of falling between those two. We're not in either camp per se. We're doing our best to preserve what I would consider the feel, the gameplay feel of turn-based, where the player has all the time they want to think through the tactical situation. They can look around the map, they can plan out their actions, make sure that their characters are doing what they want them to be doing, and make sure they didn't miss anything that happened on screen. But we're also really focused on realism. And one of the things about being a realistic combat simulation is everything needs to be occurring kind of at the same time. So in turn-based games, you get into the situation where you move your character, you might alert a new enemy, and if it's their turn and you're out of action points, then they can run across the map and attack you, and you're basically left helpless. So we're trying to avoid that pitfall. And we're doing that by making everything effectively based on the progression of time. But the game makes turns out of that time. So when you give your character an action, the time moves forward until that action completes for that character. But if you have, say, 2 or 3 people in your party, different characters will get their turns at different times depending whenever they completed what they were doing. So what we're trying to do is provide a gameplay system that gives the player what I would call the feeling of being in real combat. I realize it's still a game and you can only go so far to simulate that. But what we want to do is make it as realistic and feel as real as we can while it's still being a game.
Okay. So what was for inspiration for the game? Were there any spy movies that inspired the game or any of the settings?
I like saying that, you know, for me, my personal goal is to allow the player, when they sit, you know, they come home and they sit down in front of a gaming rig to play this game. It's going to be a PC game, right? So it's going to be a computer. And they sit down in front of the computer to play. It will give them a feeling of being like a hero of a Bruce Willis movie or a hero of a James Bond movie for the time that they play, where they get to experience a world and you know, the abilities of their character that are, you know, not something that you encounter in real life, and you know, a lot of action and thinking, so that you become an action hero. So that's my inspiration. I want to build a game that makes the player feel like an action hero for the time that they're immersed.
Yeah, well, since we're on the discussion of making the player feel like it's their character, how deep will the character customization be in the final game, or what's the plan for how in depth the character customization will be?
It depends on what you mean by customization. So right now, the attribute and the skill tree is quite deep. So we actually have put a lot of attention, and I guess I should give a little more detail here. So the character system is actually based off a game I've been kind of running as a GM for a while. So I've had a lot of practice over the years refining the core of the gameplay system for a pen and paper game I've been running. The translation to making, I don't say translation, but in the process of implementing it as a computer game, one of the things that you really see is you can keep a lot more detail for the player, but the player doesn't have to, I don't want to say be super aware of every bit of detail. So one of the examples of this is when you look at the character attributes, we actually start with 7. And each of those primary attributes, it's like intelligence, strength, senses. I'll just use that as an example. And a person can have very good sense. They can have a poor sense and not be aware of what's going on around them. But actually within sense, one of the things we do is we actually have details. So you can have good eyesight but bad hearing. So we give that player that extra level of customization if they want to use it. So the characters can really be the kind of character they want. And the same with the skill tree is we actually will have a fairly deep skill tree for the characters. And with genetic modification, that's one of the things that provides you the ability to be the hero type. Because if you tried to, if the average person on the street tried to be in a Bruce Willis type movie, they wouldn't get very far before the bad guys got them. So we genetically enhance your character so that it is believable that you're doing all these great things. And with those genetic enhancements, there will obviously be a lot of different things you can enhance or improve to make your character feel and behave the way you want.
Okay. So before we go back to the skill trees, just real quick, will the game have any kind of multiplayer modes?
We are not currently aiming for multiplayer.
Okay. So for the customization tree, you brought up like good eyesight, poor hearing. How exactly will that affect gameplay, not just character customization? Because you say you're going for a more realistic feel with the gameplay. So how would these things attribute to how the character can or cannot finish missions?
So I'll stick with senses since we're already talking about it. So for the senses, for instance, vision, we have a true fog of war in the game and a fairly robust stealth system. So there's really two ways you can find an enemy unit or they can find you. And they can either make visual contact, and the ability to do that will be based on, one, do you have a line of sight to your target? In other words, is it possible that you spot them? But assuming that's true, then there would be a check against vision. So a person with good vision could see targets further away. A person with poor vision may not really recognize an enemy until they're quite close. Same with sound. I'm sure anyone can hear an assault rifle going off, whether they're almost deaf or not. But if you're trying to sneak up on an enemy and you're wearing quiet shoes, someone with poor hearing, you may be completely oblivious to that, but someone with very good hearing might be more likely to spot the character, or would be more likely to spot the character sneaking up behind.
So I guess to add a little dimension to that, every single character in the game, whether the ones that, the player characters or the NPCs, they will all use this same model. The AI will play by the exactly same rules as the player. So if the player has good stealth, the AI, the NPCs, the enemy NPCs, will have to pass checks to hear, see, or otherwise, act to notice the player. We try to make the game fair in the sense that the NPCs don't get any extra breaks or any extra abilities that the player doesn't have.
So you mentioned before that the game was running on the Unreal Engine 4, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. So what's it like working on the Unreal Engine 4 and trying to do an RTS? Like, what are the challenges of trying to develop with such an advanced yet supposedly simple engine?
I'll take this one. So working with Unreal 4, we actually just upgraded to 4.12. It has been both challenging and very helpful. Unreal 4 is very good at rendering. So building our lifelike scenes, it gives us a lot of very powerful tools to make the scenes look good, make the scenes very visually rich to the player. It's got a very good system for presenting the player with good sound. because that's what it's designed to do. It's designed for making these big budget, first-person type games where you have a very visually rich environment. Where the challenge has come in is adapting what I would call a first-person primary engine to a squad-based tactical game, because we're not putting the camera in the player's head and just running them around the map. We're actually presenting it as a kind of a top-down, although you can move the camera in all sorts of different angles, views. So I've hit a number of issues where there's a lot of pieces of Unreal that are very clearly designed for that first person, I don't know, it's called a niche, it's the wrong way to say it, that first person type of game. So I've had to write a lot of custom C++ code to make it present the kind of gameplay we want to present. So we actually have, I guess, a couple 100,000 lines of code at this point that are primarily, that's really our distinction from the typical games you see.
So graphically with Unreal Engine 4, from what I've seen from some of the screenshots you guys shown, a little bit of the gameplay, you're not really going for that dark, gritty, Gears of War kind of tone. There's actually a bit of color in there, and everything seems to have this industrial, futuristic kind of feel. Is the whole game just going to be somewhat brightly colored, or is it going to be like a very level system?
That will depend, of course, on where you go. Not all areas. So the screenshots that you have seen take place either in the base, which is, this bright research space area. Just imagine, going into any of the biotech companies in Silicon Valley where it's all, open office space and light everywhere and all the interior walls made out of glass, and, everybody's sitting on bouncy balls and, that sort of thing. Well, I mean, we're familiar with that kind of environment because that's where we had to work for a while. But then when you start going to areas that are more gritty, as you start pursuing the baddies into the seamy underbelly of the world will start looking a little grittier. But again, the future that we're painting is a positive, upbeat kind of version of the future. It's not Mad Max. It's not, dystopian. It's not utopian either. It's basically what we think the world will look like in 2075, right? It's mostly the same. It's just slightly better, and a lot of technology works, and, we got better weapons and we got better computers, but, you probably still have to wait for your phone to load the thing that you want to do because, well, that's just the world.
Yeah. So let me try one more thing in on that. So we're working on a couple demo maps, and the second demo map we're working on is you're actually heading towards it looks kind of like an army base at night. So it's a fairly dark map, a lot of camo colors. It's not a very colorful place because, you don't want your military base to stand out in the middle of the desert. And it's set at night, so like the camera on the bottom left actually goes into night vision mode, and it's got, the green and black look to it, with the grain you would expect from a low-level screen or low-light screen. So you will get that gritty feel at times, but it's going to be mission specific.
Okay. So will the game feature permadeath? Like so many games like XCOM has really brought that kind of playstyle back. A few indie games have brought that kind of playstyle back. So will Spy DNA have a similar feature?
Yes. So what we want to do is when we deliver the game is give the player a number of controls that they can select before they start the game. How do they play it? How realistic? And basically, even though the controls will be many, the simplified explanation is, do you want to go from a typical game to full-on realism? And full-on real, if you crank it all the way to full realistic, if you die, you die. So you will have your permadeath if you want it. But you can also, on the first playthrough, when you're first getting accustomed to the game and into the game system, you may want to, not crank it all the way up to absolute realism, because that's really hard. So there will be some flexibility between how hard you want the game to be.
Yeah, so I guess this is one thing I should talk about too, is most games, when you adjust the difficulty, they do things like give the bad guys more hit points. They do things like add more bad guys to the map. We're really taking a slightly different approach to difficulty, where we're going to have the same number of bad guys. They're going to be humans, whether you're on easy level or hard level. But what we're changing isn't the bad guys, it's the player characters. We have a system we're building to try to be near fully realistic. And the thing with fully realistic combat is it's really lethal. If you're using high-powered weapons in the battlefield, it can get ugly really fast for the player. And so on the easier settings, what we're doing is we're dialing some of that back and giving the player some extra chances, or maybe I don't say reducing damage, but one of the examples is at the hardest difficulty level, when you get back to base, you'll get some healing, but you may not even fully recover for the next mission if you're on that truly most difficult setting, because recovering from battlefield injuries can take a while. On the easier settings, there would be things like getting to the base heals you fully, so for the next mission, you're fully recovered. That's one example of how we adjust difficulty. But I guess the real takeaway is we're trying to make it so that we adjust the survivability of the player rather than just throwing more enemies at them.
Okay. So from a gameplay standpoint, I noticed on your Kickstarter you had this feature called Sight Cam. One of the issues some people have with real-time strategies, despite whether you guys are more of a tactical kind of game, is that characters can miss a hit no matter how close or how far they are, because it's all a roll of a digital dice. So it seems like you guys are doing this feature called Sight Cam. Can you tell us a little bit about that feature and how it works within the game?
Yeah, I guess I'll also talk a little bit about how we do hit and miss and damage. So the combat system in Spy DNA, it's based on a physics model. It's not based on dice rolls per se. So what you see in most games is they have these concepts like close range, medium range, and far range, and then there's like modifiers, maybe minus 10 or 20% for the further you're out, where they just modify the rolls. And so you end up with like 20% chance to hit out far, and if someone is standing 1 foot from you, you still get that close range chance to hit of maybe 80% or whatever it is. So we don't do any of that. Instead, what we do is we present it like the physics model. Basically, you look at how far away the target is and what part of that target the character can visually see. And that's why we actually have the sight cam in game, so we can visualize this and let the players see what their character sees. But the chance to hit is based on how accurately you can aim a weapon. And most people, if you're a trained shooter, are going to be able to hit a reasonable target at, say, 20 yards or 20 meters. If the target is, instead of 20 meters away, it is 2 meters away, it's not just 10% easier to hit, it's a whole lot easier to hit. And we actually model all that in the game. So what you end up seeing is when a target's up close, it's not uncommon to have hit chances in the 100% range. And in the sight cam, what you're seeing is when we put that circle over the target, it's what I call what's normally called circular error probable error, circular error probable. Basically meaning that 50% of your shots that you fire are going to go in the center ring, 90% go in the second ring, and 100 or 99% go in the third ring. So basically, if you're in any tactical situation where all 3 rings are in this small circle on your target, you're going to hit your target. I mean, you're playing trained, super spies. You're not playing the average person off the street who's never fired a weapon before. And we're trying to model that in the game. So that is one of the reasons that we went with the tactical turn-based type game rather than the first-person shooter type game is when you're playing a first-person shooter, the abilities of your characters are in large part limited by the reaction and the ability of the player playing. Not their ability to think, but their ability to have twitch quick reactions. And so by making it a tactical game, you can play that super spy and do all the things that the super spy would be able to do, because you're giving effectively orders and you're mapping out what you want them to do, but their actual ability to do it is based on their attributes and their skills and their situation they're in. So I'll go back to talking about the sight cam. In a lot of the tactical games, like the new Jagged Alliance, one of the things I noticed when I was playing, a lot of times I would shoot and I would hit things that weren't the target. For instance, if they were near a tree, I would hit the tree, or sometimes I'd just be hitting the ground because there was a slight uneven in the terrain. And the limitation on a lot of these games is if you're doing a full 3D model and the terrain's not level, it's real easy for there to be obstructions that the player doesn't see because of the different camera angle. And so we added the sight cam so you can visually see everything that's going to affect your character's chance to hit the target. So if there's an uneven terrain that is blocking half your target, you'll visually see that. If they're in, you see this in one of our demos, parts of a forklift in the way, you see what parts of the target the forklift is blocking, what parts you can still aim at. We did a live play test about 2 weeks ago, I think 3 weeks ago, where players were actually really having fun with this, because they're like, oh, this target's behind cover, but wait a minute, if I aim over here, I can hit the shoulder, and that'll probably get them out of the way at least enough that they'll stop attacking. And so you actually got this, when we were watching players play, they were actually aiming for specific parts, trying to shoot around cover, and they would adjust how much they aim, or sometimes they would actually move their character a little just to make that shot a little better for them. It opens up a lot of gameplay possibilities you don't normally see in these type of games, because you just get the low cover or the high cover modifier of minus 40%, and then you either hit or miss. You can't really do much about that.
All right. Actually, it leads me to my next question about the realism in the game. You guys brought it up multiple times before. So how do realistic weapon behavior work in the game? What exactly does that mean when you say realistic weapon behavior?
Do you want me to take this one?
I can take it, whatever.
I'll take it. So what this means is, unlike most games, we don't assign a damage value to the weapons. So for instance, when you're playing most games, they'll say this gun does 2 to 4 points of damage, or maybe 6 to 9, or there's usually some range. And targets have hit points. And at that point, you roll the dice and you just do some subtraction and you see what your target's got left. We don't do any of that in the game. Instead, what we have is a model of humans in the game. So your damage that you do to the target is based entirely on where you hit the target and what weapon you're using. And to do this, we actually just created a fairly detailed model of human anatomy, and we actually map what important bits are where you hit, and we just effectively do the math from there. So if you hit a person in the arm, you can have a flesh wound where it just hits muscle, and they're probably going to have a hard time with that arm, but they're still mostly functional. Or you could break the arm if you hit the bone. Just an example. So that's kind of how the damage model works, is we're actually modeling the effects of gunfire on the target in a realistic way.
Okay, and going into cover, going in and out of cover in a realistic view, will the player have that decision of, I'm going to use this cover in a specific way, such as a chest high wall, if they use that to stabilize themselves, or they can only use it for cover?
Will they be able to use it to stabilize themselves? This is an interesting question, because in theory, the game system actually does support that, but it is one of the reasons we're asking money for mocap, because from a technical point of view, we can implement that easily, and I'd actually like to. It's one of the provisions we have. But it's one of the areas where there are no off-the-shelf motion captures available for what you're describing. So we would have to pay an actor to go and do those moves so we can put them in the game so you can see what the character is actually doing. And that is one of the limiting factors that determines how much gameplay we can provide. And it's actually one of the reasons we're on Kickstarter.
So continue on with gameplay before we move on to more sides such as the demo and a little bit more of the Kickstarter. For real-time strategy games, everybody moves piece by piece, one by one. But you mentioned that you're not an RTS, you're doing something completely different. From what I read up, everybody moves at the same time. How does that work? How does everybody move at the same time if you're still trying to do a tactical strategy game?
I think the easiest way to visualize it is that while everybody moves at the same time, the game stops for the player to give the next command whenever the action queue of their character is empty. So like you told the character to run over there, take cover, shoot 3 times, and by the time they do it, the game will stop for you to give them the next order. And so if you have 2, 3, or 4 characters in your party, every time one of your characters has nothing to do, the game will stop to tell you, hey, this person needs new orders. The game will also stop if one of your characters spots a new threat or a situational change. For example, let's say you were having a shootout with like 3 bad guys over there, and then one of your characters notices that off to the left side, there's a new threat. Then the game is going to stop to allow you to reshuffle your commands and say, okay, I don't want everybody focusing on just that battle. Let's have 2 people focus on the newcomer and the remaining 2 continue the battle that we already have over here or something like that. So it's easier shown than explained by words. But what we're trying to do is take out the overwhelming feeling of a real-time strategy, because you like everything, you have to react as quickly as humanly possible. And at some point you may just get overwhelmed or miss something, or miss a character just standing around because they got nothing to do. So we're taking that out by stopping the game every time your characters have run out of things to do, or they have new reasons to stop doing what they're doing and switch to something new. And that's kind of, that gives it a more of a turn-based feel.
Okay. So you said that you can have 2, 3, 4 people on your team. Will they be class-based, or is everybody pretty much equally trained?
So we're doing a system which is, they're not class-based. Everyone has access to all the skills in the game. But what we're expecting players will do is they'll actually specialize their characters and train different characters in different areas. We're not enforcing a class-based system to force that, but the natural gameplay will be to have specialists, because your lead character, the commander, will be on every mission. So that'll be the character that has some of every skill. But then when you look at the party options back at the base, you have characters that start specialized in different areas. Even though they start that way, you can train them any way you want from that point forward. But we're expecting the gameplay to continue to keep them specialized in those areas so that you have on-hand experts available for any mission that you might have to undertake.
And examples would be, a martial artist or a demolitions expert, explosives expert, heavy gunnery expert, things like that, so that if you anticipate or like a specialized person for break-ins, so that let's say you anticipate a mission where you want to use a lot of stealth and come in undetected and take some intelligence and sneak back out, you probably will be taking your specialized sneaky person as opposed to your demolitions expert. But it doesn't mean that you can't train. If you took the demolitions expert on the sneaky mission, you can teach them to be sneaky. It's going to take a while. You may, mess it up a couple times, but why not? And that's kind of where we're hoping to provide the extra replay value. You will have more, you will have 9 characters to choose from in addition to your main character that you could take on the mission. So through one playthrough, you may only try out a couple, or you may try only 1 or 2 approaches per map before you complete each mission. And so on a second playthrough, you may be able to play a completely different approach because you will be taking different characters with you. And we're also trying to provide more than one way to approach every map. So that if you want to go in guns a-blazing one time, that's great. But the next time maybe you want to sneak in, that's also possible.
Okay. Let's talk about weapons for a minute. You mentioned sneaking and demolition experts. What type of weapons will the players be able to choose for their characters, and how exactly will they be able to utilize them?
So the weapons in the game, they're, I don't want to say pretty traditional, but it's your standard firearms. So you have things like pistols, submachine guns, rifles, sniper rifles, hand grenades. It's pretty typical. We're also going to have melee weapons. We have a unarmed combat system for when you don't want to be making a lot of noise. So I guess another way to think about it is we actually have really 3 different types of missions too, and which weapons you take will depend on the kind of mission you're on. So we have missions where stealth is the priority, where you don't want to be, I mean, you're a spy, you don't always want to be spotted. So you may want to get some intelligence and get back out without being seen. And on those type of maps, you're going to want something quiet. On what I would call the low intensity maps, these are things like one of the demo maps you've seen us use, which is you're rescuing this person from her apartment and you're trying to get her out. And there are 2 bad guys that are coming out to stop you. You're in the middle of a residential area, so you don't want to be throwing grenades and firing rocket launchers because you're supposed to be one of the good guys, and blowing civilians up is bad. So
yeah, don't blow up civilians.
Yeah, we don't want that. So that'd be an example of a low intensity mission where you're probably going to carry, be limited in what you take with you based on what you can conceal. Because if you just walk up to the apartment complex with, an assault rifle hanging off your back and a rocket launcher under your arm, people would probably react by calling the police. And then you have, you're supposed to be getting her out quietly, and you have SWAT showing up because you came there with a lot of weapons looking like you were ready for battle. So that's an example where you would want to take light weapons that are concealed so you don't look like an obvious threat to everyone with eyes. And then there's the missions like one of the demo maps we're putting together now, which is you're in the middle of a desert and there's a base which you got to get in and get the information from. In that case, it's what I would call a weapons-free map, where take whatever you want, use it however you want, it's all good because you're in the middle of nowhere and there's no civilians or possibility of really collateral damage. So do what you need to do, get it done, and get out.
Okay. So since there's missions with civilians involved, will it be possible to actually harm one of them? And if so, will there be consequences towards the player?
Yes. So this is one of the things where we're implementing fully realistic combat. A couple of the times when we were doing demo plays, players lined their shots up badly, missed their target, and hit the hostage they were supposed to rescue. These things can happen. And it's also possible if you're using what I would call overkill weapons for the situation. You can even shoot sometimes through your target and hit other people. So yes, there are definitely consequences, because if you shoot the person you're supposed to rescue, that's obviously at best a failed mission, and at worst possibly an end game, because if that was the scientist you needed to go maybe rescue some of the rest of your party later on, that's, bad. That may be, as you were talking about earlier, the Iron Man mode. Your character's alive, but the thing you need isn't. So you've got a problem at that point.
Okay. You keep bringing up low intensity missions. There's 3 types of missions in the game that's been mentioned so far. Recon, low intensity, and high intensity. What exactly are those missions?
So recon is really exactly what it sounds like, where one of the mission objectives is to get in and get out without anyone spotting you. If you ever played something like Far Cry, where one of the mission goals in some of the missions was you were not spotted, you get this bonus point. Well, instead of a bonus, that's actually just the mission objective for the game, is to get the information without being noticed. Because, you know, as a spy, getting noticed is, well, then you're not really a spy, you're something else if you're getting caught all the time. So low intensity, the way I think about it is there are missions where there may be combat, but you don't want to overdo it. So they're something like you want to capture this person, but it's in a civilian area. So you need to be discreet, deal only with your target without causing collateral damage to other things around you. And then there's the high intensity missions where collateral damage is not a concern because there's just only enemies around.
Okay. Will players get a choice in which type of missions they play, or will that all just come down to the linear story, a linear story based kind of handout? Like one mission you have to do recon, the next you do low intensity. Will players be able to choose, I want to do low intensity now and the recon later?
So there will be some flexibility because some of the things will be, you know, there's one big mission that you're working towards and you need some recon and you need to rescue some hostages. Like you can pick and choose which order you complete some of the pieces that you need to proceed. But the story will be linear in the sense that, well, we are a two-person team. I want to write Mass Effect. I do want to write Mass Effect story. Or something similar to that. I love it, and I would want nothing more than to focus on that full time, but I need to help Jason to actually finish the game, and I need to be making maps. So our compromise in this area is we're going to make one linear story, but each mission will have more than one way to approach it. So if a player wants to specialize in complete stealth, you know, very low violence, you know, in killing the enemies will very often not be part of the objective. The objective will be retrieve item or rescue hostage, or, you know, you have the actual objective. And if you want to complete it without killing anybody and being noticed, all the power to you. If you want to go in and shoot everybody, also all the power to you. If you, however, do it in a residential area, you know, when the cops show up, then you fail the mission because government denies knowledge of your of the existence of your project, so you will just be arrested and you. I mean, they will, you know, your agency will take care of you, but you will have completely failed the game because, you know, by the time you come out, you know, from prison or whatever the government has done to you, the research has been used by bad people or somebody else was sent to recover it. Basically, you don't get to complete this game. So like, don't let the civilians get scared and call the cops. Bad things happen.
Yeah, so I would actually expand on that just a little bit. So we have what we call the storyline missions, where you're going to go through a set of storyline missions, and I think that's pretty common. We do have optional missions, which will be of various types, and so the player can choose to do the optional missions or not do the optional missions if they're not a kind of mission that they think they would want to undertake, either because of the composition of their party or just not something they enjoy.
Okay. So you mentioned Mass Effect, and of course, when it comes to Mass Effect, everybody knows it's all about the dialogue and the choices. Your Kickstarter mentioned branching dialogue. How exactly will that work within the game?
So it's going to be fairly complex in the sense that the dialogue will have effect on how the NPCs that you're talking to will react to you. We will rate your dialogue option selections for most choices on the scale, you know, from charming to scary or something like that. And so if you consistently act scary, people will become scared of you over time, and you may not get as much help from civilians because they will be just running away or just saying whatever you want, just don't hit me. and if you're super charming, everybody will want to help you more, because over time you just, if you interact with the same person times and times again, and they begin to like you, they probably are willing to do more for you than if you're just neutral, professional, or angry, scary. Especially angry, scary, they probably won't, So that's one aspect of it. And the other aspect of the dialogue is that it will provide clues. So through talking to some NPCs, you will be able to get information or convince them to hand over items to you that are, that move the story forward. And I try to make dialogue, also a little fun, and just for the player to enjoy thinking through, okay, would I say it this way or that way, or will I just say, okay, never mind, or whatever. I'm trying to make it more entertaining for the player, so that the dialogue itself is part of the game that is rewarding and fun to complete.
So you mentioned that you may have to receive items and clues from characters depending on your dialogue. Is it possible for players to fail the dialogue and not get that clue, but still move on with the game, and they probably just miss some important aspects of the story?
It's going to be, so I have a couple missions in mind where basically it will make it easier for you to complete the following missions. You will not, so dialogue will not necessarily preclude you from completing the following missions, but you may get extra help or items that, let's say you're talking to somebody and you're trying to find out what they saw, and if you fail the dialogue, if you just scare them so much that they forget everything, like, I don't know anything, and then you may not know that there were 3 people attacking this location earlier. You'll just know some people were attacking, but you will still know the crucial details, but you will be able to collect a more rich intel before proceeding through talking to others. If a player is a kind of player who really hates dialogue and doesn't want to, all they want to do is do combat, you will be able, I want to enable that ability. Basically, you'll be able to just go through dialogue anyway. But you may just be missing some non-mission critical but helpful bits. How about that?
Yeah, we'll put it another way. If you're not that interested in dialogue and you want to focus on combat, you'll probably make the combat more challenging in the process.
All right. So now we went through the game mechanics, character customizations. What can you tell us about the upcoming demo? How much of those features that we talked about would be in the demo that you're creating at right now?
So the demo has 2 levels. I'll let Alex talk about the base if you want to.
Yeah, I'll start with the base. So the first level you can load either level first if you want, but the base level is the one where the player gets to meet the research team and learn a little bit about the genetic technology and why the project was creating, a little bit of a background. That level is supposed to show off the dialogue and the RPG part of our game, where you get to actually just talk and navigate the world and see, like, meet people or whatever, and also explore what the base has to offer. Like, here's the medical bay, and here's the training facility, here's the shooting range, whatever, all of those things. And it's going to be a non-violent level where you can shoot at shooting targets, but that's about it. And then there's the other game that the other level that Jason is focusing on.
Yes. So basically, the other level, it started as what I would call an AI test map for me, where I've been working on the artificial intelligence for the NPCs a lot lately. And I started creating a military. I basically bought it off the Unreal Marketplace and plopped some NPCs on it and started using it for testing the AI in the game. But we decided we can actually use this as a demo so people could get a feel for how the combat system in the game actually plays, because as this conversation brings up, it's actually quite different, and it's something that we think players would understand by experiencing it rather than me trying to describe it in words. So it's a mission where you have 3 players, and you are effectively going to what is a relatively small military base to extract some items from it. And so you can either try to sneak your way in or fight your way in to get to the items and recover them and get them out. But it's a very combat-focused map. There's really isn't going to be any dialogue or conversations on it because it's an area where you're definitely not supposed to be. So the enemies are of the shoot-first mindset at that point.
You'll have a sniper?
Yeah, right now the mission set up where we wanted to include a sniper because with the realistic weapons in this game, snipers behave very differently than they behave in most games. Because in most games, your snipers have effectively the range that is slightly longer than your pistol range, which I always thought was bizarre. I understand it's for gameplay balance reasons, but it never felt right to me as a player. So we actually have a map set up where you can use a sniper like a sniper should be used from more than 200 meters away. And then you have 2 characters that are going in up close that start from a concealed position, and so you can plan your attack and go from there.
So the RPG element within the game, how will players be? Well, I should say, how limited will players be able to level up and do the customizations that you're implementing the game within the demo?
Oh, in the demo, I don't think you're going to have any customizations. This is a pre-alpha, very, very, very first demo that we're doing. So you played the levels with the characters that we give you, and you trust that we have given you characters that can complete the levels. In the following demos, I mean, the final game, of course, will have that, and we will have the, growing of the skills and growing of the attributes through father genetic injections and things like that. But in the beginning, this is the very first demo that we can get out. So we're focusing on just, okay, this is what we can do while we're working on the other things in the background. But we will have better, more detailed demos later. And of course, we'll have an alpha and then a beta and a preview. You know how these things go.
So one thing you will be able to take away from the demo is while the progression of the characters won't be obvious from the demo, the attribute system and the skill system will. So you'll get to see how the attributes and the skills work to make the characters feel unique from the demo.
Okay. So will the game likely see it released on other platforms or OSs? Like, will we see the game go further than just Windows PCs?
So it's something we've discussed, and we're based on Unreal Engine, so there's nothing objectively that makes it difficult to port to anything that Unreal Engine runs on, because we're not using anything that is truly Windows specific on top of Unreal. That said, it really depends on if demand materializes. Given the type of gameplay that we're implementing, we thought the PC market was the best fit for our gameplay and what the players would want. But if there's demand on other platforms, we'll obviously be able to port.
So since the game is currently only planned for PCs, are there any plans to release the game on Steam Early Access?
We're currently evaluating that, and the odds are almost certainly we will be on Steam at some point. In terms of when, we've talked about different dates, and it depends on a few things. For instance, how the Kickstarter goes will affect whether or not we go early to Steam.
So for planning after the Kickstarter, think about Steam Early Access. When would you plan on releasing that early access? Would it be more like end of this year, mid next year kind of deal?
So if we can get, that's the wrong way to say it. If we go to early access, the earliest that may happen would be December of this year.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you both for joining us and talking about Spy DNA. Best of luck on your Kickstarter.
Thank
And
you.
of course, you all at home, you can find a link in the to their Kickstarter below in the description. Check it out. And when exactly when players be able to get their hands on the demo?
In about two weeks or so, we're already taking. If you go to shysnake.com/blog, there's a form you can fill out if you're a reviewer and you have a blog or a YouTube channel or Twitch channel or something like that where you want to try our game. And we're hoping to start reaching out to reviewers in the next 2 weeks or so. So yeah, we're very close.
All right. So you guys go to shysnake.com, sign up on their form, not forms, but sign their forms to get into the alpha, try it out, stream it, and I'm pretty sure you guys will appreciate the feedback. You'll also find that link in the description below. So, Alex, Sam, thank you for joining us, and thanks for talking about the game.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.